So this is all about social psychology. I left additional notes in the notes section here on PowerPoint, and there's also quite a few video clips in here for you to watch, different experiments that have taken place. So be sure to look through all the information, read the notes in the notes section, and then watch the video clips. I think you will really like this chapter. Social psychology is the study of how people think about influences and relate to other people. The two central ways that social psychology is distinct from other areas include the connection to real life and its reliance on experimental methods. Social psychologists take inspiration from real-life events. Their research also includes real-life activities such as leadership, marketing, and persuasion. Social psychologists do use correlational research, but they often try to use experimental methods. Social cognition examines how people select, interpret, remember, and use social information. Person perception refers to the processes by which people use social stimuli to form their impressions of others. There's a number of studies that have shown that first impressions are fairly accurate. One important social cue is the face. The face can tell a lot about someone to a social perceiver. Physical attractiveness. The positive expectations for physically attractive individuals have been referred to as the beautiful is good stereotype. A stereotype is a generalization about a group's characteristics that does not consider any variations from one individual to another. When we categorize an individual, the categorization is often based on stereotypes. Positive stereotypes set the bar unrealistically high. Have you ever met a gay guy who wasn't fit, or a black guy who wasn't good at sports, or a woman who wasn't caring? I'm going to guess that you have. Now the important part is, did you realize that you were slightly disappointed or perturbed when you found out about the lack of those traits? I'm going to guess you didn't realize it, but you probably were. Let's take the list of positive stereotypes I mentioned about gay men: artsy, friendly, fun, social, well-spoken, well-dressed, and well-groomed and fit. That's a pretty tall order for anyone to fill, and the list goes on and on. Thanks to the media, every man you meet is being evaluated by a ridiculously tough rubric. If he falls short, let's say he's a bit chubby or antisocial, he's going to disappoint you. Who wants a B gay friend when there's so many A+ gay men out there? There aren't actually. But these are just some of the positive stereotypes that we tend to buy into or believe and is presented in the media. Positive stereotypes can also inhibit an individual's ability to perform. You've heard that Asian people are good at math, right? Well, if you tell an Asian person that right before a math exam, you increase their potential to bomb it. Research has shown that perceived positive stereotypes, when brought into the forefront of an individual's mind, can actually make them do worse at the thing they're supposed to be able to be better at. Attribution theory views individuals as motivated to discover the underlying causes of behavior as part of their effort to make sense of that behavior. The internal-external cause includes all causes internal to the person and all causes external to the person. The stable-unstable causes arise as an individual perceives the cause of a given behavior to be stable or unstable. The controllable-uncontrollable cause relates to whether a cause is perceived as controllable or uncontrollable. In attribution theory, the person who produces the behavior to be explained is called the actor. The person who offers a casual explanation of the actor's behavior is called the observer. In committing the fundamental attribution error, observers overestimate the importance of internal traits and underestimate the importance of external situations when they seek explanation of an actor's behavior. We also make attributions about our own behavior. A self-serving bias is the tendency to take credit for one's success and to deny responsibility for one's failures. Having an unselfish interest in helping another person is known as altruism. In examining potentially altruistic behavior or prosocial behavior, psychologists have questioned how genuinely selfless it is. True altruism means giving to another person with the ultimate goal of benefiting that person. In contrast to altruism is egoism, which involves giving to another person to gain self-esteem, to prevent oneself as powerful, competent, or caring, or to avoid censure, both from oneself and from society, for failing to live up to expectations. Egoism may also entail helping another person because we want to increase the chances that that person will return the favor someday. That is, we may be kind to another person to ensure reciprocity. Kindness is not exclusive to humans. Ethologists studying non-human primates have shown that pro-social acts also occur in other species, so perhaps kindness is an important adaptation. After listening to this slide, be sure to check out the couple YouTube clips that I left for you. These relate to the bystander effect. The bystander effect is the tendency for an individual who observes an emergency to help less when other people are present than when the observer is alone. A classic example of this is the Kitty Genovese case in New York City. She was brutally murdered while many of her neighbors watched. Many of her neighbors saw and heard the attack, yet did not call the police. There was, I believe, 38 people that heard what was going on, and not one of them called during this attack. And actually, she was home, walking home from work late one night, and a gentleman came up and attacked her. She did manage to get away. The guy took off, thought somebody had called the police because he'd heard sirens, and left, went to his car, sat and waited, and the police never came. So nobody had called. During this time, she managed to get into like a stairway or a doorway of an apartment building, and he found her there and finished killing her. He had stabbed her multiple times, and not one of the persons that heard her screaming stopped to help or to do anything for her. Prejudice is having an unjustified negative attitude toward an individual based on the individual's membership in a group. Because racial prejudice is socially unacceptable, few people today would readily admit to racist or prejudicial views. Social psychologists examine prejudicial attitudes on two levels: explicit or overt racism and implicit or covert racism. Explicit racism is a person's conscious and openly shared racist attitudes, which might be measured using a questionnaire. Implicit racism refers to racial attitudes that exist on a deeper, hidden level. Implicit attitudes must be measured with a method that does not require awareness. Implicit racism is sometimes measured by using the Implicit Associates Test, IAT. Competition between groups, especially when resources are scarce, can contribute to prejudice. Children can adopt the prejudicial attitudes of their families and friends before they even meet a person from an outgroup. Stereotypes can be a powerful force in developing and maintaining prejudicial attitudes. Discrimination is an unjustified negative or harmful action toward a member of a group just because the individual belongs to that group. Okay, so Jane Elliott, a teacher and anti-racism activist, performed a direct experiment with the students in her classroom. She told them that people with brown eyes were better than people with blue eyes. She also made the brown-eyed students put construction paper armbands on the blue-eyed students. Brown-eyed people, there were more brown-eyed students in the room. They felt superior and had the support of the authority figure and the teacher. The brown-eyed students also exercised a certain level of power over the blue-eyed students when they put the armbands on them. Blue-eyed people were the smaller group. Elliott said that blue-eyed people were less intelligent and less clean. Not only were there fewer in numbers, but the authority figure was against them. If you watch this video clip, it's a little bit longer, but it's a workshop that she did with a group of college students. Try and get to about 25 or 30 minutes in to the video. There's a participant in there with short blonde hair that kind of has an outburst. So if you can get to that part of the video, that's the first part of the video for you to get an idea of what her work is. But this experiment that she did when she was teaching third grade really turned into a lifelong career for her. Proximity, or physical closeness, is a strong predictor of attraction. The phenomenon that the more we encounter someone or something, the more likely we are to start liking the person or thing, even if we do not realize we have seen it before, is known as the mere exposure effect. Similarity also plays an important role in attraction. From an evolutionary perspective, the goal for both men and women is to procreate. Men focus on the quantity of sexual partners, whereas women focus on the quality and will look for a mate who will invest his resources in her and her offspring. Critics of evolutionary psychology theory argue that humans have the decision-making ability to change their gender behavior and thus are not locked into their evolutionary past. They cite extensive cross-cultural variations in gender behavior and mate preference as proof that social experience affects gender behavior. Two types of love are romantic and affectionate. Romantic love, also called passionate love, is a love with strong components of sexuality and infatuation. It often predominates in the early part of a love relationship. Affectionate love, also called companionate love, is the type of love that occurs when an individual has a deep, caring affection for another person and desires to have that person near. Okay. Ash's conformity experiment here. Conformity is described as a person's attempt to behave so as to coincide more closely with a group standard. In this experiment, a participant was brought into a room with 5 other people and shown 2 cards, one with a single vertical line on it and the other with 3 vertical lines of varying lengths. The participants were asked to identify which of the lines on the second card was the same as the line on the first card. The other 5 people in the room were Confederates, meaning that they were the one in on the experiment. But the volunteer participant did not know this. The Confederates chose a line that was obviously wrong. Their participant had the dilemma of either agreeing with everyone else or stating the obviously correct answer. Ash found that participants agreed with Confederates 35% of the time in giving the wrong answers. The 2 main factors that contribute to conformity is informational and normative social influence. Informational social influence refers to the influence that other people have on individuals because the individual wants to be right. Normative social influence refers to the influence that others have on an individual because the individual wants others to like them or approve of them. The brain is involved in conformity just as it is involved in all human behavior. Collectivism has been associated with greater levels of conformity. So check out these video clips on YouTube and it will provide more information on Ash's experiment and theory. So Stanley Milgram is known for his obedience to authority experiment. Obedience is a behavior that complies with explicit demands made by the individual in authority. In Stanley Milgram's experiment, volunteer participants were asked to deliver dangerous, painful electric shocks to other participants. The other participants were Confederates, but the volunteer participants did not know this. Almost 2/3 of the volunteer participants went all the way up, delivering 450 volts of electric shocks to the other Confederate participants. In variations of the experiment, Milgram discovered that more people would disobey in certain circumstances. Specifically, disobedience was more common when participants could see others disobey, when the authority figure was not perceived to be legitimate and was not close by, and when the victim was made to seem more human. So I left you a link here to Stanley Milgram's Obedience to Authority. So watch this. This is not the original experiment, but this is another variation that was done and shows the layout and the basic idea of the experiment. So the Stanford prison experiment is done by Philip Zimbardo back in 1971. The research illustrates the potentially horrific effects of obedience, not only on those who obey, but on those who wield authority. This experiment was supposed to last for 14 days and was ended after 6 days because the prisoners started having mental breakdowns. So it was basically the luck of the draw if the participants became the prisoners or the guard. Zimbardo set up this mock prison, this fake prison in the basement of Stanford University, and ran a bunch of tests and psychological tests for the participants before they were allowed to participate. But there was no boundaries set for the guards. The problem is that Zimbardo played kind of a dual role here. He was obviously the researcher behind the experiment, but was also the prison warden. As the warden, he should have stepped up and told his guards, hey, you can't do this, you know, this is inappropriate treatment. But as the researcher, he was excited and he's like, yeah, I want to see how far these guys are going to take it. And so I left a video clip here for you to watch a little bit on this information.